All right. So welcome to our very first MOPS Talks. I am so excited for this. We've been working on this for a few weeks. I think that you guys are going to hear some really awesome things from our panel this morning. Everyone should be muted by default as they're signing in. I do ask that you stay muted while our speakers are talking, but we will give you some time at the end to unmute yourselves and ask any other questions. I know that you also had an opportunity to submit some questions in advance, and our speakers have reviewed those, and we'll definitely be addressing a few of those. And we're so excited that you're here. So MOPS Talks, the way we're kind of thinking of this is kind of like a user group for MOPS pros. So this is just a place for all of us to connect. It's not necessarily about any one platform or technology. In some ways, it's about all of the platforms and technologies. This session and the next few that we do, hosted by Kelly Jo, are going to be specifically career focused. I think Kelly Jo, I would definitely consider one of the OGs of marketing operations. She has some really great thoughts around how to kind of build a career in MOPS and what that's looked like for her and what she's seen that looked like for lots of other people that she has managed. And I'm really excited to see this session today and the next few that come along. Would love, feedback on how this goes and what you're interested in talking about in the future. Feel free to reach out to me on Slack anytime. And we're so happy that you're here. So I'm going to pass it over to Kelly Jo, and she will introduce our speakers.
Yes, well, I was going to have y'all introduce yourselves, but we have two people on this early morning session, at least early morning for Courtney and I, because it's 6 a.m. So we have Courtney and Tyson, and I just want you guys to just introduce yourselves and say where are you working now? We're going to talk about your past in a bit, but what are you doing right now, and where are you dialed in from? Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and start. Hi, everybody. I'm Tyson Juergens, dialing in from the epicenter of Manhattan, New York, staying safe and staying healthy in my little basement apartment. Right now, I'm working at an ed tech company called Newsella. We make classroom instructional content that teachers use for students. Most notably this week, we've released a lot of content about the history of protests in America, the history of police brutality, Black injustices. We're always kind of on the cutting edge of what teachers need to talk about kids, but can't really find anywhere else. And actually in April, I just moved outside of my MOPS friends, my familiarity zone, into a community engagement leadership role, building out our online community and making sure that our teachers have a place to work with each other and interact to become stronger brand advocates.
Okay, we're going to talk about that later because that was actually one of the questions. So
right.
Similar questions. Okay, so go ahead, Courtney.
I'm Courtney McCara. Hello from Portland, Oregon. Yes, it is bright and early. I wouldn't even say bright. It's just early here on the West Coast. And I am currently working under the name Mustang Martech. So about, 14 months ago, early last year, or during Vegas Summit last year, I transitioned out of my full-time role and decided to open my own consulting business. It's just me. I don't have a team or anything like that, but trying to find clients that I can help with marketing, automation, and operations and everything kind of in that world.
And I'm Kelly Jo Horton. I have met Courtney in person. I've never met Tyson. So lest you guys think that I'm just picking my friends to be on here. I mean, we've never met, but we all know each other through the industry. So we have a very close-knit industry group. We have MOPS Pros Slack group where we're all pretty active, and honestly, you feel like you know people even though you've never met them in person. And then when you see them at some conference, you're like, you just want to go hug them, and everybody's so excited to see each other because sometimes we see each other in person once a year, maybe, or randomly at a conference. So I'm working at a company called Room right now, and we're headquartered in Manhattan in Soho. We make soundproof modular office space, which may be highly useful in the future, phone booths and rooms that fit more than one person. And I am the principal engineer of marketing operations and technology, which means, well, we'll talk about what that means in our first question. So I just got, how did I get a Slack notification after I turned all of that off? I am going to mute again. I knew that would happen. Okay, so we got a lot of questions for this session and for the one later today. So, and I have some questions of my own for our two guests. So I want to start with you two. We're going to start off with a little role play. It's called What I Do for a Living. And Tyson, you have to talk about what you did before you had your community job, because that's too easy to explain. So you're sitting on a plane. So this is pre-pandemic because the middle seat is not empty. Okay. You're on a plane. Would you pick the aisle or the window?
Window.
Oh, aisle. I have
Okay.
long
Okay.
legs.
So you're sitting in your seat and there's an older woman next to you. We're just gonna say it's the Queen of England. She's in the middle seat. I don't know how she got in the middle seat, but she's in the middle seat. She turns to the person on the other side of her, not you, and says, "What do you do for a living?" And the guy says, "Oh, I'm an accountant." And she looks and she goes, "Oh, that's lovely." And then she turns to you and says, "What do you do for a living?" How do you explain that to somebody like the Queen of England, who you know has no idea what we do? How do you explain that to someone? Because we've all had that problem with relatives and everybody else. So, Courtney, what do you say to the Queen of England when she says, "What do you do for a living?"
I definitely have had this question before, and my mom is British, so I definitely have had
Hey, I
this.
didn't know that. So
Yeah, learn something new. I usually say I help people manage email databases. And then even if they're like, well, what does that look like? How do you do that for 40 hours a week? I'll say, well, now that people have websites with forms and they can collect information, then they have this imagine a giant Excel spreadsheet with 20,000 columns and 20 million, a million rows. And I help them figure out who in that database or that spreadsheet is subscribed or unsubscribed or opted in or needs to get an email or should get an email about XYZ or should get an email about ABC. So that's how I break it down.
Do you get a lot of glazed over looks when you start going that direction?
I think once I actually say the unsubscribe piece, I think that's the
understand
term.
The unsubscribe.
Yeah,
they understand email, right?
They understand email and that, people probably have a lot of people they want to email and they have to figure out. And then I'll kind of mention GDPR. I won't use the acronym, but I'll say.
The Queen would understand that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Totally understand that. What about you, Tyson? How do you tell if the Queen of England asks you what you do for a living, not before the community thing, because she probably understands community.
Yeah.
But let's talk about your other job.
I would probably default to I work in marketing technology. If somebody probes, I have this metaphor that I really like, where I talk about the marketer's toolbox. There's a box of tools that we have as marketers that we can use, and I'm the one that buys new tools and writes the instruction manuals for the tools. Somebody pretty much gets like, oh yeah, hammers and drills. Like I get that those are different.
Hammers and drills.
I like it.
It's marketing hammers and drills.
Totally.
So, okay, so now it's not the Queen of England anymore. So it's the people on this call. If you have, I find myself, the reason that this whole thing started is because I find myself talking to bartenders and Uber drivers and people who ping me on LinkedIn, asking me what I do, how I get into this. I've even tried to convert my kids in college, right? I have a son majoring in computer science. And so if somebody who maybe knows a little bit, not in marketing operations, what is marketing operations that we affectionately call MOPs, because marketing operations is a mouthful. So how would you describe what marketing operations is today?
I always say that marketing operations is in charge of how the marketing team works. And I choose the word works because it does a lot of work. It has a lot of different applications. Works like from the plumbing and electrical standpoint, things moving, things being passed, it's all functioning and humming along. So in that instance, we make sure that marketing works. Oftentimes marketing ops is also responsible for things like processes, for things like SLAs within the marketing team. Are the image files done? Is the copy finalized? Are there further edits? Who needs to approve this? So when I say it's how the marketing team works, that generally covers most of the job that would fall under a marketing ops organization.
And now, Courtney, what about you? Is because you're a self-employed consultant, so it's probably a little different for you. So how would you describe MOPS in your world?
Yeah, I've always tried to just say the liaison between, sales and marketing, which I know is now becoming a decade-old term, but we really are connecting the traffic from the website, digital people to getting it into whatever CRM the sales team is working. Sales isn't working in Rolodexes and notebooks and pens and paper, but how do we make sure a salesperson knows who to respond to, knows what to follow up on? So I've used that analogy a lot. I also I did study, we're going to start talking about my background a little bit. I took like an elective or two with supply chain management when I was doing my grad school program, and I loved it. And we did these awesome field trips to these really cool, like, production manufacturers that had the tape on the floor for Kaizen and process improvement and efficiencies. And it made me think of the game Mousetrap from the 80s, where, if anyone remembers that game, there's a marble that rolls down a slide
Yeah.
that knocks a thing. And that's how I even do my job. I really visualize things like, this massive dominoes games of what is one reaction that starts another chain reaction that does something else.
So that is a perfect lead into the next question I was going to ask you is, do you, and I know the answer to this, but you got to answer, do either of you have a college degree, or what degrees do you have that actually, yeah, but I mean, you weren't thinking about this in college, I gather, but what's your college degree?
So,
You have
yep,
one.
I do. I do have a business degree. I got an MBA. I was late to join the college train. I was one of those high school kids that was like, I'm not going to work in business. That's so vague. What does that even mean? I wanted to do like sociology. So, yeah, then when I was like 23 or 24, I decided to go to school. And so, busted through the bachelor's degree. And then I was like, well, I'm here and I really love this little college town that I live in and I don't really want to grow up. So I did a 12-month MBA. So the bachelor's degree, I did, study business and marketing, but I do feel like those supply chain management classes, like oddly enough, are the ones that relate mostly to what I'm doing now. And I did that during my MBA program. A little, some finance and, economics and statistical significance for my A/B testing, email blasts has helped a little bit, but yeah, definitely did not exist. Had never even heard of Salesforce or Marketo or even what SaaS even meant. Never heard of Dreamforce, any of that, because I finished my MBA in 2008. So before I think Marketo was even just a startup in 2007.
Right. What about you, Tyson?
Oh gosh. Well, I similarly was one of those little idiot kids that got a very expensive degree in theater directing, and that was a great idea.
Perfect for marketing operations, and now your new community job, theater directing, because it is a bit like herding cats, is it not?
Actually, there is no better preparation for delivering a satisfactory product under budget and on time than theater production. There's no choice.
Amazing analogy.
And you have no choice but to have something to show people. So that is like great practice. I too got my MBA. I chose to focus on marketing and management. I really wanted to have, I had been a second grade teacher through Teach for America prior to that. And I really wanted to have a nationwide or global impact, larger than my one classroom of students. And the first time I really got a glimpse into Marketo, that was like this light bulb moment of like, oh shit, like this is how you impact a lot of people at once. This is how you make a difference on a really large scale. So that was my like initial driver into marketing ops from there.
That's the other question. You guys are so good at lead-ins. You don't even know what order I'm at. You don't even know what I'm asking. So that's a good point. So because this career, now it is a career, it wasn't a career, I don't know, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, it didn't exist. It was just something people had to do if they were in another job, usually, right? You had this as your, extra responsibility or something. But so what was the job that was right before, like you said, you had a light bulb moment? Because I get questions a lot of, how do you even start? So where were you? Like, what job were you doing where somebody like You saw somebody else doing this job, or you were exposed to it, or you were forced into it somehow, like somebody just handed you this responsibility. What was that thing that happened before you ended up on this career path, Courtney?
Okay, so graduated with this MBA in 2008, which was a,
It was
big
a good year for
economic.
getting
Yeah, it was a
employed, wasn't
great
it?
year to try and find a job. And I was living with my parents at the time, and I was like, please, somebody hire me. And yeah, it was really tough. And so I did get a job as a like marketing administrative assistant. I think I ended up taking the MBA off my resume to try and get attention and be like, I'll work for, $12 or $15 an hour. I just need something. And I remember the job description said must have Salesforce.com experience. And I went and Googled it and I was like, I don't know what this is, but I'll figure it out. I had no idea what it was. Clicked around their website, saw a couple little videos, and I was like, I'm young, I'm smart, I'm a generation where I can figure out stuff. And just kind of begged my way through the interview and got this job. And I mean, I was really a gopher for this small, kind of a tech company. They built websites and did SEO and SEM for dentists and orthodontists, so very specific. But they had Salesforce and no one owned it. They had like a 2 or 3 person marketing team that was going to like dental trade shows and was members of like associations in the orthodontic space and getting lists and stuff like that. But Salesforce was kind of owned by the customer support team. And I just slowly started learning a lot where like they didn't have first names, a lot of the leads and contacts in Salesforce, because it was dentists. It was, Dr. something Smith. They just realized they didn't know how to make it not a required field. So they put in the word needs for everyone's first name. NEEDS, needs, because they needs the first name. And I just took to Salesforce like a fish to water. I was like, Salesforce reports, like grouping matrix reports, like checkboxes, filters. And I was like, how has no one figured this out and looked into this? And so they were like, you like it here, become an admin. And it was just kind of interesting. I just saw something that was a hot mess and jumped into it. So I was very lucky, I guess, being at the right place at the right time, and something that was like worked with how my brain
And
works
someone
naturally.
who didn't know that you didn't know.
Yeah.
So they let you do it, right?
Yep, exactly.
They weren't hiring an expert because they didn't know what they didn't know. So
Yeah. Well, they obviously, were hiring some marketing, like I said, administrative assistant, and giving them the keys to Salesforce. Like, again, that was just kind of the
yeah,
perfect storm that
I've been there.
yeah. But I'm so eternally grateful for that job now, because
Yeah.
they even sent me to Dreamforce by myself,
Wow.
and I just was obsessed with the energy and all these tech companies coming to one place and using this platform, getting organized and using it differently. And I really felt like what probably most people feel like as an 18-year-old freshman going to college. I feel like this was like, oh, wow, these are my people. Like, it was a very, very cool experience. It's very overwhelmed. And I stayed in the Tenderloin. That was a hot mess.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it was back then even worse. So what about you, Tyson? What was the job before the job?
Yeah, I was traveling nationally, training school principals on how to evaluate teachers based on a bunch of legislation back then. So in Salesforce a lot, just like Courtney mentioned, and we had a new VP of marketing that went to a charter schools trade show and just saw me interacting with clients, talking with new clients, and he's like, oh, shoot, that guy should be a marketer. So he like asked the CEO if he could move me into his marketing team, and I said, great. That was my MBA. That sounds like an awesome career path. And the first time I looked into their Marketo instance, I'd never heard of the tool, had no idea how emails got sent. And I just saw like tens of thousands of leads for like discount UGG boots. And was like, oh, this doesn't make sense. This looks like these aren't teachers, are they? So there was an opportunity right away to provide real value and show the value of the work. I loved every opportunity in that very first job where I could like make somebody's pain go away. Something that just sucked over and over and over, and no one had the lexicon to fix it. If I could go in there and fix it, there was like just that huge boost of trust and faith. So those are my kind of early marketing operations moments where like it just felt good. It felt like a little hit every time like somebody was appreciative of something.
So you're in it for the adrenaline. You're in it for the adrenaline and the dopamine.
I love that expression though. I kind of want to jump in on that, taking out someone else's pain, because that's why I like operations has been really good for me, because it's black and white. It's either working or it's not, right? Either your report is clean or it's a hot mess. And that just really just suited my personality. With so many other types of marketing. Actually, at that same company, my next promotion, when they were like, oh, she's doing well, we want to give her promotion to no longer be an assistant, we're going to make you our brand manager. Now I know what I know about brand. I'm like, that was definitely not their job for me, where they wanted me to look over like the color, the shade of green on the printed collateral to decide if it was actually on brand or not. That is not my world. I wasn't like taking away anyone's pain other than the CEO who wanted a certain green. But I love that, Tyson. That's a great expression.
So for anyone on the phone who does not work in MOPS, I don't know what everybody does, but you can see that it was kind of an accidental entry into the field for a lot of people, and it really doesn't have to have anything to do with the degree you have, but you can use various parts of whatever degree you have probably in this job somewhere. So let's talk for a minute about the fact that this job has changed a lot in the last 8 years, 10 years. There are, depending on what size company you're in, you can be a team of one or you can be on a big team. So there are now specialties within this field. And people might ask, I don't know, which specialty I would want, or if I want to be sort of a jack of all trades or a Jane of all trades and do everything. So can you tell me what you think are sort of the vertical sort of career paths within MOPS itself, within marketing operations? What do you think are the different job types that we have? Either of you, whoever wants to go.
I've never had one of those specialized jobs, and I've never worked in a business that had like subcategories of MOPS. I've worked in different organizations where MOPS was really big and broad, owned every marketing technology, owned every process and procedure. And I've worked in organizations where MOPS was really, really narrow in terms of database management and like Marketo workflows. So my experience with the varying of the job is really how big the MOPS team's coverage looks,
Right.
not necessarily how the job descriptions are, but I know that there are some other people on this call that could speak more eloquently to
Yeah. Courtney, what about you? Have you been a team of one a lot or on a bigger team?
Both. It's really been like, 50-50. I think, you asked about the job before the job, which I talked about. Then I did get kind of the Marketo job that they had an instance of Marketo already integrated, support. It was a big public company. It was a division of Expedia. So it was kind of, things were plugging along and working really well. And that's where my knowledge for Marketo really grew. But was still a very small team, even though I'm like, oh, we're part of Expedia. There's 3 of us in this marketing department for corporate travel. And we just did it all. We wrote our own copy, and we kind of were making our own images for a while until we figured out we need budget and hired a little agency to help us, but did our own database management and building forms and all that kind of stuff. So that was like the very small team of 1. And then later on went into a team of 7 people in MOPS supporting like 30 to 40 marketers. That's where Kelly and I interacted and met. So that was different. And then people really do get into niches. I mean, that is also a great experience. I love being broad. I love knowing a lot of little things. And I think that's really important, at least for me, historically, was important at the beginning of my career. And then as things have progressed, I've kind of become a little bit more of a narrower focused expert. There's people that really want to focus on supporting demand gen. And like the tactical building campaigns, capturing leads, supporting field marketers, doing events, that kind of thing. Makes me think of like landing pages and forms and workflows. And then that's very different than the behind the scenes like architecture of how does Marketo talk to other platforms like your CRM? Are you staying within your Marketo? Sorry, I keep using
I know, I was just
the
gonna
M
say,
word. I'm so sorry.
they're mentioning Marketo all the time. That's just where this is platform agnostic. So
It is, yes.
marketing, so you could say, we've all probably worked in HubSpot and Pardot and Marketo and
And
Eloqua,
Eloqua.
all of these other marketing automation platforms. And I've, worked with different CRMs and all of this. So it's, even if we mention something by name, we're talking in generalities of how these things all work together. We're not here to sponsor any one specific platform.
Yes,
So
I sincerely apologize. It is a habit. But
when
yeah,
you talk about your stack, it's like talking about your children, right? And you my name. So,
but yes, definitely talking about how the platforms are integrated, how data is shared to CRM, to the sales team. So that's, I think, a different skill set. And then there's a third one, which is a world that I am not really involved in, but there's a lot of people that kind of come into marketing automation or operations from the design side, from like web design, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. And that's it's a world I actually don't know much about at all and tend to, outsource, but there's a lot of people that are really building careers in that. And there's a lot of like fancy REST API, SOAP language in that world as well.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that because a couple things really jumped out to me. One, confession, I've never worked in any other marketing automation platform other than Marketo. So when we're talking about specialization, I think that's an important one. It is very okay to like find your home and be the best at that and be really competitive on the job market. I know that specifically my expertise in that one system has gotten me at least 3 jobs. So like that is a thing that can make you as competitive as being a specialist in a type of MOPS as well. And the second is like, when I think about the people that become specialists, that consulting path, like Courtney's a consultant, I was a consultant at a marketing ops consulting firm as well. That's where you really get the chance to grow those skills. And I mean, most companies can't hire a full-time person to specialize so deeply in marketing ops, but there is a world where there are consultants that are absolute experts in a very particular thing that can come in and in a couple of months fix your problems. So that's like a super valid career path for people that want to get that deep specialization.
Yeah, I agree with that. I see, and I went to technical. I have gone more on the technical side because, I don't know, because I have a degree in journalism. Maybe that's it. I thought. So I spent a lot of years in tech support. I think that was a really good, like, area to specialize in for a long time because I think what we do a lot of the time is troubleshoot and support. If you're an admin, you're going to spend a lot of time on Jira tickets or whatever you use, solving problems and stuff like that. So yeah, I see the verticals similar. If you're just starting into this career path, a lot of people start out just learning how to build emails. So you could be like an email marketing manager or something like that, and not be on the technical side at all if you're in a company that already has an admin. Because being an admin of one of these platforms, any of these platforms, is very different than building an email, right? It's a lot more technical and requires, and building templates, like everybody mentioned, being a specialist in CSS and HTML is also another kind of specialty. So there are all kinds of career paths, and it's just getting to be a bigger, many more choices these days. So I want to ask, since we touched on the topic of agency versus in-house, and someone had a question of like a career trajectory question of, would you recommend, working in an agency or working in-house, like what the differences are? And we've all, I think, been back and forth a few times. And so I would like to hear from you guys about your experiences of what it's like to work in an agency environment versus in-house.
I'll kick us off. I was in a consulting group for I want to say about 15 or 16 months. It was invaluable to me. I picked up the language of how to help people solve their problems. That's a really specific skill set. Knowing the questions to ask to build the flows to avoid the problems is really specialized. And it takes a really diligent thinker. And in-house, you often don't have the ability to do that. You don't have the ability to take as much time as you might need to fix every problem preventatively that you might want. And consulting does like really develop the language of servicing the clients, which, you know, even in-house, marketing ops is usually a shared service. We think of everyone else in the business as a client. Ultimately, the thing about consulting that I found that wasn't a great fit very long term was that I did so much hard work and did, if I might say, amazing work, but never got to reap the benefits of that personally. As soon as it got to a place that was stable or working, I would wave goodbye, and then the clients would be on their way, either to like a different type of support, or, you know, their contract was over. And I found myself really wanting to live in a marketing landscape that was highly functioning and successful, and I just never had the chance to do that. So that made the move back to in-house really important for me, but I was like, absolutely so appreciative of the time I spent consulting, and how that helped me be a better MOPS leader in the end.
And Courtney, what about you, since you're on the consulting side now?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I actually, maybe it's because I'm new to consulting. Like I said, it's just been a year, but I love coming in and spending a few months and getting a team. I would say I'm either like the Cinderella of MOPS, or,
The fairy
you know,
godmother.
yeah, exactly. I come in and like to clean things up and get people to a stable place where they can then decide, okay, there is enough work here and we can justify a head count for a full-time employee, or we can manage this on our own, and then I can go off and do it again. I've actually really enjoyed kind of dropping into different instances for like 60, 90 days at a time. And that's been really, you know, satisfying for me. But again, we'll see. Maybe, you know, maybe I'll burn out and I'll want kind of a solid home again at some place in the future.
It just goes to show that like whatever kind of worker you are, whatever kind of employer landscape you value, there's a room for you in this
Absolutely.
career. There's always
very,
a
very
place
true.
to work that matches your personal style. There's no shortage of work in this industry.
Yeah. You guys, if you want to type questions in the chat, someone's going to send them to me via Slack, or we can unmute you if you want to ask a question. Because otherwise, I have a million questions. But I mean, I'm asking the ones that people submitted, but I would also like to hear if you have things these conversations have sparked along the way. I do want to talk about certifications, because multiple people asked about certifications. I have an opinion, but I'm going to let you guys go first. So, are certifications important for any of the platforms that you work on? How do you see a certification?
Yeah, my certifications definitely got me jobs. By just entering that interview and saying I'm an expert and this proves it, means that we don't have to go through the 15 or 16 questions asked by a person that doesn't know what they're talking about, and then me having to like back explain. Like, it just carries a lot of weight to say, you don't have to even trust me that I'm an expert. You can trust the platform itself.
What about you, Courtney?
That is an interesting one. I feel hesitant to answer. I want to make sure I choose my words wisely. I like the certification, like definitely have valued them, and there's new ones coming out all the time for new platforms. And there's a few that I haven't taken yet that I have on my like homework list. But I also don't know if it's a perfect magic wand to guarantee success, you know. And I think that's hopefully the person interviewing you knows that. I've seen some people get certifications and then, you know, been in their platform or worked with them and been like, how did that happen? So I guess there's, you know, you can't just focus on getting certified and, you know, boosting your LinkedIn page or your resume with a bunch of badges. You know, you do want to make sure that you're still learning along the way. But Kelly, you now have to tell us your opinion now that we have spoken.
So I was at a conference once, sitting at a lunch table, and there was a guy sitting at the lunch table bragging about how he just passed a certification test without ever having been in the platform. So in my mind, depending on the certification test, like some of them are harder than others, if it's a bunch of multiple choice questions, anybody can take a test. And if I was hiring somebody, I would ask the hard questions and ask, how many years do you have in the platform? If I'm hiring for someone who has to hit the ground running, right? Certification in that respect on some of the platforms means nothing to me.
Mm.
However, if you work for an agency, agencies are given their status by the companies. Their people have to be certified, because when somebody hires an agency, they are going to look at how many people in that agency are certified experts on whatever platforms they need help on. And so if you're going to work for an agency, you are absolutely going to have to be certified in as many platforms as they support, because they need to list those things on their website. They need to they need those certifications to sell clients. So it makes sense. If you're in an agency, you will need to be certified.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction too, that like, this conversation is like the path to a career. I was thinking about it in terms of getting the job, not necessarily keeping
it. There are a lot of job descriptions you'll see that require you to be an expert on something, you to have these certifications. And I've been at companies where my manager, whoever that is, the SVP of marketing or whoever, will say, okay, but I know this guy who passed this test without ever having been in the platform, and it makes no sense to me. However, things like, I would say like, so I used to teach Oracle classes many moons ago for Oracle certification. And those tests were hard, okay? There were 5 different certifications if you wanted to be an Oracle DBA, I think at the time. They were difficult, and there was no way you were going to pass those if you didn't know what you were doing. No way. So those kinds of certifications where the tests are that hard, I'm all for it. If you're going to hire somebody to manage a database like Oracle or SQL Server, whatever, those are really, really hard tests to pass. So it's kind of like when you're first starting out, you might want to do it. It does cost money. There's the other thing, if you're paying for it yourself, it's going to cost you money to get the certifications, but it could help you get a job even before you have enough experience to get that job, just because you have that certification.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting as this whole industry progresses, how certifications change, because I think I know what you're talking about. To be able to take one with never being in the platform, hopefully we'll get to the point where there's like a technical certification and a strategy certification. Do you know what the value of lead scoring is to your team and why you would want to do it and some methodologies behind it versus how do you do it? And those to me are 2 different things. So will be interesting to see, maybe we'll see that in 2021.
Yeah, it's hard to write those tests.
It's very hard. It's very hard.
So, and it's hard to score them when you have answers like that, right? Yeah, be nice to have an interactive one, like, here, go build this. I mean, we've all had interviews, I think. I've had interviews where somebody was screen mirroring me and I had to do something while they watched. So those are the kind of interviews that are nerve-wracking.
I'm going to pop in really quick with a couple questions from the chat, and definitely we're getting really awesome questions in the chat, but totally encourage anyone who has a question to try to pop in and unmute themselves. That's why we're doing this in this meeting format. We want you to be able to feel like you can talk directly to a really awesome speaker.
Yeah, this is no death by PowerPoint, as you noticed.
Yeah, no one needs to see another PowerPoint.
We're here to talk, to just like discuss this career with everybody.
Totally. So this question was from Casey. Casey said, even with my MCE, I occasionally feel like a fraud, someone is going to find out at some point that I don't have all the answers or skills to do everything in Marketo. Casey's the only Marketo user at her company. If any of you also feel this way sometimes, how do you overcome it, especially when applying for jobs? I think this is a great question. I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, and it has a lovely term called imposter syndrome. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it.
You're all smiling. What do you got?
It is our duty to not convey that we know all the answers, but to convey that we know how to get them.
Right? I knew you were going to say that. It makes me so happy. I was like, I think I know where this sentence is going, 100%.
Yeah. When somebody hires an expert in marketing automation, they are not hiring somebody who knows the 2,000-page product docs in that company's site. They hire somebody that knows how to ask the right questions, that knows where to go to find the resources, that's honestly well connected with other experts, That's the value that we bring. So there is no imposter syndrome if you're on a call like this and connecting with other experts. That's exactly what you were hired to do.
Bravo.
Totally agree. I mean, this might not be the best branding for myself as a consultant, but I definitely have moments where I feel like a fraud, where I'm like, what am I doing? How did I get here? But, you take a deep breath, you kind of lean on some friends and people that know you and support you. And it's using deductive reasoning and logic, really taking a step back, taking bite-sized chunks out of things. I do also think that relationships and communications are so important in MOPS. You can tend to, I said this in an interview a couple of years ago, I don't want to be the MOPS person in the basement with my stapler just like fixing things. You need to go and talk to the other teams. And I remember doing, when GDPR came out in 2017, it was a beast at the company I was working with at the time. And they were like, oh, Courtney will own it. And I was like, holy cow. We had, many different platforms and databases, and I had to just go and meet like the security team and the engineering team and be like, I'm the little marketing person, please help me. I didn't know what I was doing, but we figured it out together. And I think that relationship building, is a big part of it. So my last caveat for Casey is, if anyone ever tells me they know everything about Marketo, I immediately have like little warning beacons. Thank you, Tyson, that go out. I would never tell anyone I know everything about Marketo, because or any marketing automation platform, I'm getting better about being brand agnostic. I think it's impossible. They're becoming such ingrained parts of marketing departments that if you can either know a little bit about a lot of things, or you can know a lot about a couple of things. So, try and find someone in your org to support you and, deductive reasoning. And now you have a community like us, and reach out and ask questions, and we will all help you along the way.
Yeah, I learn something new every day. And I think that's why I have been in this job so long, in this kind of career, because it's challenging every day. Somebody will ask me to integrate something new, a platform I've never used, and you just need confidence in this job. More than anything, you need to, like Tyson said, you need the attitude that I don't know this, but I can figure it out. That's what is going to make you successful in this job, is to just have the ability to say that in a meeting. I mean, I have had in the last month integrated and support 3 new platforms, like a data warehouse, all these platforms that I'd never been an admin on. And I was just like, I can figure this out. I can do it. And just, I let people know, you know what, I've never done this, and we're just going to see how it goes, but yeah, everybody, if somebody tells you that they know everything about any platform, I would question. That would be like red flag,
Like red
because
flags.
I find I have been in these platforms for many, many years, and I still learn new things every day, especially in our MOPS Pros Slack group. I mean, the questions that get posted in this Slack group, I'm like, what? I've never seen that before. I wouldn't have even thought of that. I mean, we have some amazing people in that group. I highly suggest that you join it if you're not in it. It is platform agnostic, so you can ask about anything in that group. So, good question. Do we have anything else, Sydney?
I'm actually going to pick on Chloe, because Chloe's posted a few really great questions, and I'm going to make her ask them herself, because I like Chloe and I think she'll let me pick them.
I'm more than happy to ask them live. I'm just waiting for the right moment to just like unmute myself. Tyson, you actually brought up a really interesting point a couple minutes ago when you said, sorry, my son's having a meltdown, by the way. You said that it's okay to be platform like specific, platform unique, because it can progress your career. What if you're in a situation when you are gung-ho about a certain platform, you start looking for another job, you go through the interview process, and you find out they don't use that platform? Do you take a risk and start learning another platform? Or do you try and like wiggle your advocacy? Because I found myself in this position multiple times, actually, where like everyone knows I'm a Marketo geek, but twice I've joined other companies that have not used Marketo, and I've been lucky enough to come upon a CMO or a VP who has said, yeah, let's bring in Marketo. I'm like, I can help. How do you if you are platform specific, and you're in the career, the hunt for a new job, how do you use that to your benefit if all companies don't use all the same tools?
I don't even know what that experience would be like. I don't know how I would react if I showed up on my first day and wait, what? I think that like my expertise in one platform would make me very quickly able to be a high performer in another. That might be like the overconfidence of a generic white man. I don't know. But like, I think that I would be pretty dangerous pretty quickly with the right like initial learnings. I don't know that I would be willing to do that or able to do that though, if I like was taking a chance on a new employer and I felt duped maybe a little bit. And I think it depends too, like whether you have the opportunity to hold out for a better position to come along, especially if you're in a market that maybe has like limited users of Marketo or limited HubSpot companies around. I think the work from home and the remote working landscape is going to totally change that, because that blows open everybody's opportunities to find that right fit company. I was lucky to have a couple of times when I could like wait for the right job, and a couple of times where I like really, really needed to find one immediately. And I was just doing like LinkedIn quick applies for any job posting that had Marketo listed. You know, like I've done both. But thankfully never been in that position. I'm so sorry that you have. That really sucks. Yeah, I think it all comes down to like your willingness to either like put up with that BS or find a better fit for the skill set that you have that is like so widely appreciated and well paid, and so many companies that are desperate for that expertise.
I actually have like the opposite opinion and experience, which again, I just think
That's
is
great. I'm so glad I have you both on today then.
Yeah. I would actually, I mean, I guess it depends on the platform that they had in place. If it was something super homegrown or obscure or not well made. But I would be very open to learning other things, because I think the question is why did they choose that tool? Did they choose it because of its integration with other things that they have? Did they choose it because of costs? Or, you know, a lot of it will be based on cost. Is it size? Is it stability? Is it legacy? And then, you know, if there are reasons for picking it are justified, and then, yeah, I would want to support it. And I think it expands your skill set. I mean, obviously being able to do change management and make the internal budget, you know, justification to migrate to the platform that you like is another challenge in and of itself. But I like learning all of them, because, you know, hopefully now that I've kind of figured out that this is my career, I would like to be in it for a couple years, and things are going to change. There's going to be competitors that pop up, that get acquired, that drop off. And, you know, as companies get acquired, you never know how long they're going to stick around or be relevant. So I think it would be a good opportunity to get a little bit more like breadth of experience.
Can I ask a spicy question? And if this is
who are you asking it to? I guess
the group. I guess
you can always ask a spicy question.
I can't imagine a time when that would happen to a Salesforce administrator. Like it would be like patently unbelievable.
That is true.
Admin would be hired and showed up and be handed Microsoft Dynamics. So I think there's a little bit of opportunity for us to advocate for ourselves there too, and say and like know that our platform expertise is as important as other organizations' platform expertise. If you were an expert in Ruby and you showed up with a different coding language like that, I would leave that job. You know, there are ways that would feel like almost professionally hurtful to me. And I just wonder if anybody thinks that would happen in other.
I'm going to say that there's the value in knowing more than one platform is being able to migrate and be a migration expert. That's a skill in itself, to be able to take a company from one platform to another. First time, really hard. Second time, you learn. Third time, it's like you have it down. You have your whole, if you can go into an interview, which I just did at the last job I took, they had another platform. And I said, I will consider this if you migrate over to from X to Z, whatever. And so my first 3 months were spent migrating all of their marketing content off one platform to another. So, and it is a question that I ask every time. And at the beginning of the interview, why are you on that platform? And, you know, if they can give a good reason, I'm like, okay, well, that's the platform you should be on. Really, that's the fit for your company. If not, I would ask, are you willing to consider another platform if the cost is the same or less? So you can negotiate for sure in these job interviews. If you are an experienced person, you can absolutely negotiate if you know the difference between the two platforms and how it could be an advantage for them to switch to the one that you know better. I would try it. I would totally try it. We have like so many, not too much time left, but I just want to say, obviously we don't have enough time to answer all the questions. We have another session this afternoon for people like in Australia and who didn't want to wake up at 6 a.m. on the West Coast, with 2 different guests. So, and we have this MOPS channel that you can ask questions in. We're all in it. We'll answer anything that's left over. So, but go ahead. We still have some time to answer some more questions. So what do you have, Sydney? Or someone who wants to speak up?
Yes, I'm just going to allow a few moments of silence for someone who's been waiting to unmute themselves to ask a question.
I don't mind jumping in. Hi. Well, so earlier you guys were talking a lot about the different kinds of career paths within MOPS, and I think that was really interesting because I'm in my first MOPS job. I'm sort of like experiencing all of it, from like the campaign to the platform to just every single thing. How did you guys figure out which one sort of best suited you and your skills and your temperament? And because right now all of it's sort of a challenge, and then that's great and I enjoy it, but how did you find your sweet spots?
I have turned down jobs before because they weren't on the right like maturity scale for what I needed out of my next role. Kelly mentioned doing a bunch of integrations or installations or implementations. I'm a firm believer that most marketing ops people have like 2 or 3 of those in their lifetime. And I was at a point where I was out. I was like, I could not do another start from scratch platform installation. And the company that I was at the company that I was interviewing for made it very clear, and I asked really clearly in the interview, like, am I gonna walk into a build scenario, a run scenario, or an optimized scenario? Like, what do you need out of your operations professional? Because I am not the right person for another build scenario. I am much more interested in something that's working and something that's like highly performing and exercising those parts of the skill set. Again, I think I was privileged in that moment to be able to turn down a role. But having the language of knowing like, where are you in your operations journey and what's going to be expected of me? If I'm going to be a firefighter, I better know that I'm going to be a firefighter and be really excited for that kind of work rather than a tinkerer. Because rarely do we do both at the same time.
I would ask yourself, what brings you joy? As far as like the Marie Kondo thing, right? When you have a project on your plate or you have a task or a JIRA ticket comes in or whatever, what's your physical reaction to that? Because as we've talked before in our MOPS venting Slack channel, what's your trigger word, your trigger phrase that just makes you cringe if that comes in? That's what you maybe don't want to focus on. What energizes you when you get that request and you work on something? That'll tell you if you want to go to the technical side or you want to go to the side where you are doing strategy for email campaigns or something like that. So for me, I mean, I'll let Courtney answer too. I didn't want to jump in, but for me, it was over time very clear to me that I liked the technology side because it's so logical. And but I'm a team of 1, so I still do everything. So, but I do like coming into a meeting and doing the high level strategy of everything as well. But I gravitate towards the more technical side, just because to me, I have all this troubleshooting background from years of tech support and things like that. And I really, really like hard problems and figuring out things like that. So I would just pay attention to how you feel when you're working on these requests, on things that you're doing, and gravitate towards that the things that you're excited about. What about you, Courtney?
Totally agree 100%. I would find myself working really late at night on like building smart lists and cleaning data and like, standardizing state codes. And I was like, it's 8:30 at night and there's nowhere I would rather be, you know? So there's gotta be projects that come your way where you're like, I'm not doing another one of those again. And that might be kind of a way to kind of figure out what you're naturally drawn to. I'm curious even to throw the question back to you. Have you already noticed that, or are you just so busy just trying to get things done?
That's a good question. I probably know it more in negative. So like, I don't like being a firefighter. That's far more stressful than I think I would like on the day to day. Campaign operations has been nice. Though I don't like writing content, because right now, like for an email, I'm responsible literally nuts to bolts of like content, images, whole everything. And while I don't mind some of the build, I definitely like having to write an email. I'm just like, please leave me alone. Let me build the email.
Usually you have content, you would have content people, either contractors, so I'm surprised, if you have to do everything, it's tough.
We're just a small team that got furloughed on top of that, so everybody's picking up things. I also manage our social, and I hate that right now.
I have had that, and I also hated it, and I was like, definitely, yep, I knew I didn't need to do brand management. I know I'm not going to do social. Yeah.
I think I'm definitely learning. I think some of the platform stuff I'm getting a little bit more into, so that remains to be seen, I think. So kind of whittling it down, sort of figuring it out. So
it's funny, and another experience I had is I actually did get a head count. I got approval to bring someone onto my team. And so I had to decide, well, what am I going to give that person? And I found there was a couple things that I just wanted to hold on to. That I was like, wow, I am a little greedy here, but things that I really enjoyed and things that either did make sense to pass off. And then I was like, there's some really big, complicated projects that I really wanted to pass off. But I was like, well, I can't do that to a new hire. I need to own that as the lead of the team. So, if there was a magic wand and there was all of a sudden two of you, what would you immediately get off your plate?
Sounds like
you would give away content. So.
Well, man, we're on our last minute. I'm so sad. This was such a good conversation. We had
flew by.
Come in, and we get to do it. I get to do it again at 4. So, Sydney, do you have any parting words for people?
No, I don't think so. This was so awesome. I could not be happier that this was our first MOPS talk. This went super, super well. I am going to circulate the recording to everyone that registered, so you can go back and relive this beautiful hour again anytime you would like to. And I will do the same for the session this afternoon. So even if you didn't register for that one, you'll get the recording for that as well if you don't feel like staying up pretty late to check it out. But thank you so much, everyone, for your time. And thank you so much to Kelly, Courtney, and Tyson. This was really, really great. If your question did not get answered, then please post it in the MOPS Pro Slack channel. And I'm sure that
what channel should we post it in?
Let's post it in the MOPS Martech chat.
Okay, Martech.
Yeah. Martech chat, that should be good.
And if y'all want to slide into my DMs, by all means.
Or career might make more sense. I don't know. Post it wherever your heart desires is fine.
Just make sure you tag somebody.
Yeah. It'll get answered for sure. And I'll pull out the questions that are left in the chat too. So thank you again, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your day.